What's going on, guys? Ted from Immersion here, and I am back with another top 10 video. This time, at the request of one of you guys, the fans, I'm going to be doing top 10 level 2 spells. I've already done a top 10 spells video, and I actually did a redid that version again. And I did a top 10 cantrips, and that was actually suggested that's pretty common. People do a top 10 spells or top 10 cantrips, but people don't really focus on later level spells. So this is going to be my top 10 level 2 spells. So if that sounds interesting to you and you want to see what my list is like, stay tuned. Number 10. So number 10 is Hold Person. I mean, it's a pretty standard option, I feel like, in a lot of different characters' repertoires, especially if it's an option that you have. It is a wisdom saving throw, so potentially a pretty common one depending on how it works. But the ability to lock someone down with the paralyzing them completely, allowing you to, if you hit them, one, have advantage on the attack, and two, have it be an automatic critical hit, is a quick way to shut down basically any combat. And a lot of your more bulky, barbarian, berserkery type enemies won't typically have a very good wisdom saving throw. And in fact, in a heated player versus player moment in a recent game, one of the characters basically shut the barbarian down entirely with Hold Person because they weren't able to do anything because they just continued to fail that saving throw. That's the only real downside to it, is you do get a saving throw every turn, but it is at the end of your turn. So if you fail, then you basically wasted a whole turn doing it. I guess I also should say the downside is it only works on humanoids, which I feel like is a big... it comes up more often than I would think, where people are like, oh, I want to use it on a giant because they think the giant is humanoid-shaped, but they are not a humanoid monster type as far as the game is concerned, so it does not affect them. Number 9. Number 9 is Heat Metal, and I really enjoy Heat Metal as a spell. Again, obviously situational. Your enemy needs to either be wearing something made out of metal or holding something made out of metal, but where I think it really comes into play really well is when someone is wearing some sort of armor made out of metal, because I feel like a lot of people don't really look at the doffing and donning times for armor, and that's because honestly, more often than not, it doesn't come up too much, but the amount of time it takes to doff armor really means that sometimes, in some cases, you can have heat metal go for the entire duration, and the person couldn't get out of their armor unless, before your spell ends. So what does heat metal do? You basically, any creature that comes in contact with this, whatever object you decide to heat, which is a ranged spell of 60 feet, takes 2d8 fire damage when you cast the spell. And then you can continue to concentrate it, and as a bonus action, just deal that damage again. So, right, if the creature's touching it, they can choose to let go of whatever the item is. Like, say it's a sword, right? They could let go of the sword and then no longer take the damage. If the creature is holding or wearing the object, they must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or drop the object if they can, right? So, again, sword or a weapon of some kind. If it doesn't drop the object, it has disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks until the start of your next turn. So, again, you can't drop armor because you're wearing it. And I think for plate mail armor, I think it takes something like 10 minutes for you to actually take the armor off if you're not in a rush, I believe. But the duration of heat metal is a minute. So even if they were somehow able to do things a little bit faster, your full length of your heat metal spell would run out before they could even take the armor off. So that would be you dealing 2d8 fire damage to them every turn, and because they can't, and the damage just happens, that's just, there's no save for that. But they, if they don't succeed on that con save, they have disadvantage on attack rolls and ability checks. Essentially, that would be continuing each turn, and you can upcast it to, do extra d8s of fire damage. Number 8. Number 8 is Misty Step. Who doesn't love a teleport? And it may only be a 30-foot teleport, but it's a 30-foot teleport as a bonus action. And it's only a second level spell, since that's what we're talking about. Obviously there are better teleports out there. Things like Dimension Door goes a long way. excuse me, especially because it lets you take someone with you, and the range I think is like 500 feet. But Misty Step is something that is available to some, classes early on. Also, certain subclasses get Misty Step as like a domain or circle type or oath spell, and that can go a long way. I think it really shines for the Oath of the Ancients Paladin because you could Misty Step with your fine Steed if you have one. But yeah, I mean, I haven't found a scenario where I haven't found Misty Step useful, especially because you can teleport 30 feet as a bonus action, and then if you needed to run, use your movement, and then use your action to dodge or to dash, it really just extends. Basically, for most races, basically gives you an extra 30-foot movement speed, which is typically what you have. So it's essentially a double dash for a lot of people. Plus, I mean, again, you could ready an action. Actually, you can't ready an action to cast Misty Step because it's a bonus action, so disregard that completely. But it's a great way to avoid opportunity attacks, to get across short gaps that you may need to climb up or jump over. I mean, it has a lot of versatility, and I'm sure there's other reasons and other ideas that I haven't even thought of how to use it. Number 7. Number 7 is Mirror Image. I love Mirror Image as a spell because it gives you so much survivability and defensibility, and it's not concentration. So basically what it is you take an action and you create 3 illusory duplicates of yourself. And then basically whenever a creature goes to attack you during the spell's duration, which is a minute non-concentration, you roll a d20 to determine whether it hits you or one of your duplicates. So you have the 3 duplicates. You must roll a 6 or higher on the attack's target. You must roll a 6 or higher on when you have 3 duplicates, and then the enemy attacks one of the duplicates. With 2 duplicates, it's 8 or higher, and with 3, it's 11 or higher. The duplicate's AC is 10 plus your dexterity modifier. If the attack hits a duplicate, the duplicate is destroyed. A duplicate can be destroyed only by an attack that hits it. It ignores all other cover and damage, all other damage and effects. The spell ends when all 3 duplicates are destroyed. So the meaning behind that is like if they drop a fireball, it doesn't destroy all your duplicates. It has to be an attack that's directed at you or, potentially one of them. The only downside to it is if people use something other than their sight, right? So they have blind sense. They have, if they can see through any kind of illusionary based things, or if they have true sight, like that's typically the one that lets you see through illusions, then they don't fall for it. So they would know. But, it's a great way to, especially if you can get access to it. It's a good thing for like a wizard or a sorcerer. I think maybe warlocks can get it as well. Yeah, so it's, if you are kind of squishy because you're a caster, this could be a great way to enhance your survivability, especially if you kind of get the idea that combat's coming, but so you don't have to waste a turn doing it. You can pop this off right at the start and then, help to survive through it. And it looks like it's also available to, I know, the Trickery Domain Cleric and the Circle of the Land Coast Druid. So especially on those two who could possibly find themselves in melee, pretty regularly, this could go a long way to help. But I mean, if you're a Hexblade Warlock, this could also be huge. Number 6. Number 6 is Shadowblade. I don't know if you've seen this spell. It was a new spell added in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. But this is a great spell. I feel like it also is similar to, in some respects, to the Flameblade spell. But this one is an illusion, and it's very, very powerful, and it shines especially well on an Arcane Trickster Rogue. Let's talk about it. So it's a bonus action to do. It's a minute. It is concentration. But you basically create a magical sword made of shadow. It counts as a simple melee weapon with which you are proficient. It deals 2d8 psychic damage on a hit. It has the finesse, thrown, and light properties with a range of 20-60. In addition, when you use the sword attack to attack a target that is in dim light or darkness, you make that attack roll with advantage. If you drop the weapon or throw it, it dissipates at the end of the turn. Thereafter, while the spell persists, you can use a bonus action to make it reappear in your hand. So you can see, one, it does psychic damage, a highly unresisted type of damage. The only thing I'm not sure about is whether or not you add your ability modifier or, to this attack, because it says It's a simple melee weapon with which you are proficient. It deals 2d8 psychic damage on a hit. And then it states as finesse, light, and thrown, so I guess it could potentially be using your dexterity modifier. It doesn't state, but I would assume that would be the case. But it's a light weapon, it's a thrown weapon, so you could wield a weapon in your offhand to throw multiple, this and another weapon. It's finesse, so it can utilize your dexterity. And especially this whole, if you're attacking a target that's in dim light or darkness, and you have advantage, I mean, that's a trigger for sneak attack right there. And the fact, again, it's an illusion spell means a Arcane Trickster Rogue can just take this spell. They don't even need to use one of their one uses that's outside of the two kind of classes. Spell schools, rather. And if you manage to cast it with a 3rd or 4th level spell, it does 3d8 psychic damage. 5 or 6, it does 4d8, or 7th or higher, it does 5d8. So it does a decent amount of damage. It plays very well into certain classes that could get advantage on it as well. I don't know, I think it's a really good spell. It's Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard, but again, this would be something that if a Eldritch Knight fighter wanted to get, they could, or a Arcane Trickster Rogue could very easily get it. So I like this spell a lot. I'd like to see more Blade-based spells, right? We have Flame Blade and Shadowblade. I would like to see, other elements get their own flavorful version of this in, going forward. That way, other classes that have more elemental focus can get, use out of one of these spells, and they don't have to, basically choose just between psychic or fire. Number 5. Number 5 is Flock of Familiars. This is probably a spell that, to a lot of people, unless they use something like a D&D Beyond where you get to see all of the spell options, they may be unfamiliar. And I mentioned in my top 10 campaign-specific items, Galdur's Bubble Pipe from Lost Laboratory of Qualish. Well, Flock of Familiars was a new spell that was added in that adventure as well, so you may not be aware of it. So it is a 2nd level spell, obviously. Casting time is 1 minute, though, and the duration is 1 hour, and it is concentration. So what happens? You summon 3 familiars, essentially, instead of 1. They take the animal forms of your choice. Each familiar uses the same rules as the Find Familiar spell. All familiars conjured by this spell must be the same creature, celestial, fey, or fiend. If you have a familiar conjured already, you just get 1 fewer. So if you have a Find Familiar spell up, and since that is non-concentration, this would give you 2 more. Or if you don't have it, this would give you 3. Familiars summoned by this spell can communicate telepathically with you and share their visual or auditory senses while they're within 1 mile of you. When you cast a spell with a range of touch, one of the familiars conjured by this spell can deliver the spell as normal. However, you can cast a touch spell through 1 familiar. Only 1 familiar per turn. So for a recon situation, you have 1 hour, you could send 3 familiars out in 3 different directions to do recon. So that's pretty big. The thing where I think it really shines, though, is how since familiars can't attack, but they can do things like use the help action to provide advantage. With 3 familiars, you could provide help, potentially provide help and or advantage to 3 separate characters every turn in combat, or, if it's a non-combat scenario, because it does take a minute to cast, you could use this to help a whole bunch of people in a sort of social or role-playing scenario. So that could be really fun. I don't know, I just like summoning spells and things that let you have pets, and this lets you have 3. So, and this is a warlock or wizard spell. So what's interesting is if you're a warlock, you may not have access to Find Familiar unless you choose Pact of the Chain, but you can get Flock of Familiars and have 3 for a little while. Number 4. Number 4 is Healing Spirit, or as it's affectionately known as the Healing Sprinkler. This is one of the most powerful low-level healing spells you will ever find. It is available to druids and rangers, is a bonus action to cast, and it lasts a minute. So what makes it so powerful is it's basically you summon a spirit, and until the spell ends, whenever you or a creature you can see moves into the spirit's space for the first time on a turn, or starts their turn there, you can cause the spirit to restore 1d6 hit points to that creature. And the key point here is the key factor is it doesn't require an action to grant people the hit points. The spirit can heal constructs or undead. As a bonus action on your turn, you can move the spirit up to 30 feet to a space you can see, And if you cast it with a spell of 3rd level or higher, it does an extra d6 per level above 2. So what happens is you put this thing down, and it's basically anytime someone moves through it on a turn. So the reason people refer to it as the healing sprinkler is like when you're a kid and you run through a sprinkler in the summer, if everybody just runs in a circle through this thing, you can choose to, for the first time on a turn, so basically within 6 seconds, as long as everybody runs through it, everybody gets a d6. This thing lasts for a minute, that's 10 rounds, so in 1 minute, if everybody continues to run through this thing, everybody will get 10d6 hit points. So that's a huge way, and it's been discussed, and I think even Jeremy Crawford has some tweets out there about it. But yeah, it's just a really strong low-level healing spell. It outclasses most things. I mean, 10d6 healing is pretty powerful, and actually it's really powerful. It's an average of 30 hit points back, and Cure Wounds can't attempt to touch that for several levels higher than that. And Healing Word will never get there, really. So, I really recommend this spell if you're a Druid or Ranger, even if you're not planning to be a healer class or be a healer of the group. This will be largely appreciated by basically anyone. Because if you can get yourself out of combat and then get 10d6 hit points back in a minute, that could really prep you for whatever's coming next. Number 3. Number 3 is Shatter. Shatter is a fantastic spell. I think it's one of the most versatile spells. It looks like it's also on the most amount of classes. I see Bard, Sorcerer, Warlock, Wizard, Tempest Domain, Cleric, and the Artillerist Artificer. So as an action with a range of 60 feet, you create a 10-foot radius sphere, and creatures within that must make a Constitution saving throw, or take 3d8 thunder damage on a failed save, or half as much on a success. A creature made of inorganic material, such as stone, crystal, or metal, has disadvantage on the saving throw, and non-magical objects in the area that are not being worn or carried also take the damage. And what's cool is it's thunder damage, but unlike Thunder Wave, it doesn't have a large, explosive, loud component where people get to hear it. You basically know it seems to me it's painful, intense vibrations and ringing sounds. So it doesn't make a large like boom like a thunder wave. So I'm not saying it's essentially silent, but it's a ranged attack that does thunder damage, which is a ranged saving throw spell. But thunder damage isn't very heavily resisted in the game. And little bonus to being, if it's an inorganic creature or material, that's a bonus. And I mean, I'd say for a bard, it's probably one of your best damage spells because, one, again, it's not going to make a ton of noise, and it's something you can get at 2nd level, and it does upscale for each level above 2nd. It adds a d8, and this can be very clearly one of your go-to damage spells. And I mean, I've even taken it in a lot of other classes as well. You get your fire-based attacks when you're your wizard or your sorcerer or whatever, but you want to diversify your damage type, and this is a great way to do it. Number 2. Number 2 is Find Steed. Find Steed is one of my favorite spells in the entire game. The reason it's number 2, we'll get to in a little while when we talk about number 1. But part of the reason why it's also, again, number 2 is it's only a paladin spell. Yes, a bard could take Find Steed with a magical secret, but it is one of the... I feel like it has a lot of interesting roleplay mechanics as well, similar to like a Find Familiar could be an interesting mechanic for your character, but it is a 10-minute casting time, which is one of the downsides to it. But basically, you summon a special version of a creature. You choose either a warhorse, a pony, a camel, an elk, or a mastiff. It says your DM might allow you to summon other animals. The only problem with that is I feel like a lot of things, the fact that the Find Greater Steed spell exists, which is a 4th level spell, really cuts down on the options I feel like your DM would allow now because, you can just get this at a higher level. It has its stats, but it becomes either Celestial, Fey, or Fiend. And additionally, if it has an intelligence of 5 or less, its intelligence becomes 6, and it gains the ability to understand one language of your choice that you speak. So now this thing has become more or less, the lower limit of, almost human intelligence, and it can understand languages. It serves you as a mount both in and out of combat. You have an instinctive bond that allows you to fight as a seamless unit. When mounted on your steed, as we kind of talked about with Misty Step, any spell that you cast that targets you only also targets your steed. When it drops to 0 hit points, it disappears, leaving behind no physical form, and you can dismiss it as an action, causing it to disappear. In either case, casting this spell again summons the same steed, restored to its hit point maximum. While your steed is within 1 mile, you can communicate with it telepathically. You can't have more than one steed. If you make a bond with a new one, the old one disappears. So, I mean, every time I've ever played, and maybe this isn't how it's intended to be designed, but every time I've ever played a paladin in any campaign with anyone, we've basically had the steed also gets its turn to act on my turn in combat, both for movement's sake, like a mount does for the mounted combat area, but it also can choose to attack if it has attack abilities. So that's how it's always been used in every game I've played. Perhaps it's not supposed to be written that way. And if that's the case, then it's not as powerful as I think. But it's still one of my best and favorite spells. I play a lot of paladins, so I always have this spell up and active. And I don't know, if you haven't or you have an opportunity to play a character that can get access to this spell, I don't think you're going to be disappointed if you choose it. Number 1. Finally, number 1 is Phantasmal Force. I think Phantasmal Force is one of the best spells out there because it gives you so much leeway in the way it's worded that you can do some truly amazing things with this spell. So it's an action to cast and a minute concentration to keep up with a range of 60 feet. And it is a 10-foot cube, and basically on a failed save, you create something that exists around the character that you're casting it on. It says you create a phantasmal object, creature, or visible phenomenon of your choice that's no longer than the size of 10-foot cube and perceivable only to the target. It includes sound, temperature, and other stimuli, also evident only to the creature. The target can use... So basically, it starts off with an intelligence saving throw to see if they succeed against it. So that's a huge thing, because intelligence saving throws are not super common, and typically things don't have a great intelligence saving throw, so you should do pretty well there. The other benefit is the target can use their whole action on their turn to examine the phantasm with an investigation check. So not even a saving throw, an investigation check against your spell save DC. If they succeed, they realize it's a phantom or it's an illusion and it ends. But if they fail their investigation check, which again, no benefit to auras or saving throws, and a lot of classes, more often than not, or even enemies and monsters, don't have a specific proficiency in investigation, so it would be a standard, just straight roll pretty much for them, plus their intelligence. But here's where it truly shines. While a target is affected by the spell, the target treats the phantasm if it were real. It rationalizes any illogical outcomes. For example, a target attempting to walk across a phantasmal bridge that spans a chasm falls once it steps onto the bridge. If the target survives the fall, it still believes that the bridge existed and comes up with some other explanation. An affected target is so convinced of the phantasm's reality that it can even take damage from the illusion. A phantasm created to appear as a character or a creature can make an attack. Similarly, a phantasm created to appear as fire, pool of acid, or whatever can damage the target. Each round on your turn, when the phantasm can deal 1d6 psychic damage to the target if the phantasm's area, if it's within the phantasm's area within 5 feet of the phantasm, provided the illusion is of a creature or hazard that could logically deal damage. And then the target perceives the damage as the type. So it is psychic damage, but if they think they're sitting in a pool of acid, they'll perceive the damage as acid damage. So one of the main, one thing that I super like to do is pretend, my illusion will be, if they fit inside it, that they are in a box that is on fire. So they are restrained inside this box. They can only move within the 10-foot cube, or even you can make it smaller, make it a 5-foot box. So they believe that they are fully encased in this box, and the box is on fire, burning them. Therefore, they can't see out of... You can see into the box because you know it's an illusion. They can't see out of it because they think the box is real. They can't move or do anything else because they feel like they're trapped inside this little box, so they can't move or run. and because they think the box is on fire, they feel like they're burning from the box, dealing a d6 psychic damage every turn. And I mean, that's just one example, but you could come up with all sorts of crazy examples of different things you could do to shut down people in a combat scenario. You could also use this outside of combat to pretend to make it look like somebody else, or like a monster's attacking someone, to kind of tweak things in a social scenario into your favor, or cause a distraction, or make somebody look like they're crazy because people are like, what are you talking about? There's no monster here attacking people. You're crazy. What are you talking about? So I just really like the spell. And again, I like spells like this where your imagination is the only limit to how the spell works. Well, your imagination and what the DM is willing to let fly. But either way, I think it's a very cool spell, and I think you should check it out. So that's it, guys. That's my top 10 second level spells. I hope you enjoy this. I am trying to keep up with a cadence of one top 10 video a week. I may go to 2 or more depending on what I have on the docket as far as timing, but also as far as ideas and what I want to do. So anyway, if you're new to Nerd Immersion, there has been a lot of you coming to join the family here lately. So if you're new, please click the, if you like what's going on here, go ahead and click that subscribe button down below to subscribe to the channel. I guess I should also say ring that bell, because everybody always says that in YouTube videos, to stay notified when our videos come out. And if you like the video, throw a thumbs up on it. And if you'd like to see me do more RPG D&D related stuff in a more live scenario, I do stream every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday evening, and occasionally every other Sunday. My friend Celeste runs a one-shot show called Mistress of Modules here on the Nerd Immersion Twitch channel. So we're trying to get ourselves up to 3,000 followers on Twitch. We're pretty close now. I think we literally have 69 followers to go. And then that's going to trigger a fun one-shot that one of our other players who doesn't really run games at all, she's going to try her hand at it and running it live. So if that sounds interesting, be sure to go give us a follow over on Twitch. And lastly, I did open Ko-fi page, and there is a link in the description to that if you'd like to check it out. That came from you guys asking to see if there's another way to support Nerd Immersion outside of just doing Twitch donations. I'm also looking into setting up a Patreon, but that's something that's going to happen in the future because I have to think a little harder about what kind of benefits I can provide to people. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.